everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got an epic show ahead, but just remember, if any of you have experiences you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. You can either email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com or head over to paranormalportal.net and scroll down and find the button that says Interview Me, and that'll allow you to look at a calendar of possible times and dates and find a date that works for you. Love to hear your stories, so definitely get in touch with me. Hey everybody, welcome to the Paranormal Portal podcast. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you all so much for being here and being a part of my journey. Special thanks for all the love and support that we receive regularly through the comments and through feedback, and just seeing all you guys out there listening means the world to me. And a special thank you to those of you who take it upon yourselves to refer other people to the Paranormal Portal. As I've stated many times, I don't advertise this show. And I hear all the time, hey, so-and-so told me to check out your show and I love it. And that means the world to me. So a special thank you to you all. Today we got an amazing show. I am joined by Tom Izzo from Texas, who is here to talk about his incredible array of experiences and his journey of discovery into not only what he's been experiencing, but into himself as well. So without further ado, let's dive into this. Hey, Tom, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me.
It's absolutely my pleasure. I really appreciate it. And it's, as I was talking to you beforehand, and I know it may sound kind of cliche, but I really do think it's a brave thing for people to come forward and talk about their experiences and kind of open their heart up, bare their soul, because a lot of times these things can be confusing, traumatic, isolating, and all of those things. So it is an incredible step for somebody to say, hey, I want to share this. And so special thank you for doing that. But I got to start with the canned question. Where did this journey start for you, Tom?
Oh, as a child.
Okay.
So I was born in New York, White Plains, New York.
Okay.
And I used to spend a lot of time at my grandparents' house there. And remember as a child, if I had to put an age to it, probably in the 5 or 6 years old age range there. I would be sleeping at night in the bedroom and I'd open up, something would wake me up, and I'd open up my eyes and take a look, and there'd be a figure standing in the doorway and just standing there looking at me. Sometimes it would smile and it would scare the hell out of me. Like I would pull the covers over my head and just like my heart, I could hear my heartbeat. It's like, and I'm just sitting there and I would peek out and it would still be there. And then I don't know how long I'd been on the covers. I didn't see it again. And then I would go run in the bathroom because it was an older style home. It was built in the 40s. The bathrooms didn't have windows or anything. So I would go run in the bathroom, turn the light on, lock the door, and sleep in the bathtub. And that would happen to me almost every night. The whole time I was staying at my grandparents' house.
Can you describe this figure? I'm just curious because I'm trying to visualize what is young Tom seeing here.
So it was a figure, height-wise, probably I'd say 5 feet tall or so. It was a man standing there. He'd have his hands in his pocket, and he'd just be leaning up against the doorway, and he would just smile at me.
Huh.
And that was scary. I didn't know it. So the first time it happened, I went and told my grandmother, and I was like, hey, there was this man standing in the doorway last night. She's like, oh, that was your grandfather. He walks at night. I'm like, no, it wasn't Grandpa. Like this guy wasn't Grandpa, because he had like a bluish hue to him. So there's like a bluish like outline, a hue.
Okay.
And I could tell he was wearing like, I would say older style trousers, maybe 30s, 40s-ish style look with like a vest on, and he would just have his hands in his pocket, just standing there. I was like, that's not Grandpa. Like Grandpa wouldn't be dressed like that,
Sure.
So of course, it was the whole, no, you had a dream, your imagination thing. But it wasn't, I know it wasn't. And I never felt in that house day or night, I never felt like I was alone. So, I would tell my parents about it. They would say the same thing, like, oh, there's nothing there. I would hear footsteps there at night. But every night that figure would come back that I stayed there. And every night I'd be in the bathroom till I heard my grandmother get up and start making coffee in the kitchen. I knew it was daytime. I could open up the door and come out.
Oh, wow.
And that's where I would sleep, in the bathtub, with the light on and the curtain drawn across the tub. So,
Wow. That's a lot for a little kid to deal with, you know? What was your age at this time? Probably, roughly?
yeah, I was in that like 3 to 5 year old range there, somewhere around there.
Yeah. And when you say blue hue, what jumped into my mind is the original Star Wars trilogy when, like Obi-Wan standing there, or Yoda and Luke's dad, and they kind of got that blue glow, but they're also translucent. Was what you were seeing see-through, or is it looking solid but with a blue glow?
No, I mean, from what I could remember, it
Sure.
had like it wasn't that translucent from what I could see, but
Okay.
I'm also like trying to look at it like this through the covers, because I'm opening my eyes and seeing
Sure.
it like, damn, like it's there again. So
Yeah, man.
it's there it is again.
Was it a pleasant smile or a creepy smile? I'm just trying to understand this.
No, it was a warm smile.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It was just kind of like I would look at my son if he was sleeping, like,
Oh, okay.
that kind of look there, thinking about it. That's what it was scary at the time. But,
Sure.
as I got older, I started thinking about it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I would say I was probably around that kindergarten age, trying to remember back. I mean, it was
Okay.
all back because we moved to Florida when I was just about 8 years old.
Oh,
So I'm
okay.
thinking it was sometime before that. Yeah.
Wow. So this experience didn't continue after moving, at least this very experience. So that was very localized to this location. Is that right?
Everything was at that location. So,
Okay.
but it even after my grandfather passed, then I saw him. So
Oh,
when we were there for the preparations of the funeral, all of us kids were sleeping on the floor in the living room because like everybody was there, and there was just a lot of people in the house, and we were just sleeping on the floor, um, in the living room, and something like woke me up. Like I felt like something sat me up,
oh,
and I looked at like my cousins, like they were asleep, and he was out, and I turned around, and my grandfather's sitting in his chair, and he's smiling at me, and he always sat in this one chair all the time,
sure.
with his legs crossed,
Hmm.
with a cigarette, and he would watch the news. That's what he would do. That's how I remember him, with a brown sweater on that he would wear all the time. And that's what he had on when I turned around, and that scared me. So I ran into where my parents were sleeping, and I lodged myself between the bed and the wall, and I closed the door, and I'm looking out under the bed, and I hear footsteps coming down the hallway,
Oh, jeez.
and they stop in front of the door, and then the door opens, and then I hear the footsteps get closer, and then it stopped at that point. So um, I'm assuming that might have been him.
Yeah.
Not 100% sure. And then every time after that, I would hear footsteps. Every time I stayed at the house after that, I would hear footsteps up and down the back hallway, and they would stop right in front of the door and then just keep going. So
Wow.
those are occurrences that happened there quite a bit. They had a basement and an attic, and I would go up there and play around, and things, I would feel like I wasn't alone. I
Uh-huh.
would feel like I saw shadows, but everything seemed to center around that house. But
Okay.
they were the original owners of the house. I don't, they bought the house, and it wasn't lived in prior. So don't really know where all that came from. And I still don't, till this day, don't know who that man was that would stand in the doorway.
Yeah,
So
that's really interesting, and perhaps it's tied more to the location than the actual house itself. I don't, it sounds like that was the house.
could be the property.
Yeah, yeah, right. Like the land remembers a lot of times, and those kind of things can, I guess, migrate to the new dwellings just as easily as just being in the dirt. So, yeah, that's fascinating. So this happened over a period of several years then.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you cope with this? I mean, as a young man dealing with, things you couldn't possibly understand, how did you deal with it? Just kind of out of sight, out of mind, or what did you do?
No, I just would hope it wouldn't come back. So,
But it always
like
did.
I said, I told who I thought I needed to tell and just got the answer of no, there's nothing there. So I just stopped. And then it just got to a point where I would just sleep with the covers over my head. And I didn't live there. That wasn't our house. We
Okay.
actually lived in Mayapack. Um, so that's just when I would spend the time there
Hmm.
and, spend weekends there or summers there or a couple weeks at a time there is when I would notice it. And then when we moved to Florida, I would go back there and visit. I would still see that same apparition would still be there. So it was like, it just never went away. So,
Wow.
but nobody else experienced it. If they did, they didn't say, and growing up Catholic,
Yeah.
you don't really acknowledge a bunch of that stuff. I mean, we're Italian family, and Italians are very superstitious to begin with,
Hmm.
but with their own cultural beliefs, right? So stuff like that, I don't think it really goes too far down the road. It doesn't go a long way.
Right.
So yeah, I just stopped talking about it, and then I tried to block. Well, in fact, I know I tried to block it out,
Okay.
and I think that's where at that point a lot of things got turned off for a long time for
Sure.
me until I started to get older. But I always had different feelings about things. Like I knew right away if I met somebody, um, if they're somebody that I could get along with or not. So I could always feel things around me. Like I don't ever feel like I'm alone.
Right.
Uh, and even currently now, if I'm here at my shop or something and I'm by myself, I'll feel like there's something else here, or I'll see something move at the house. We're renting a house now because we're in the middle of relocating.
Hmm.
So, a lot of people live in that house, a lot of residual energies in that
Sure.
house, and I can feel it. Like I did my best to like cleanse everything and all that. But
Yeah.
so throughout my life, I still felt like there were things there. I would see things move. I'd see shadows move, and um, think I heard things. So it never really left, but the visualization of it was gone. Like I don't see anything like I saw anymore.
Oh, well, that's probably good though. Yeah.
There's a part of me that wishes it was there still.
Sure.
So I think as an adult now, I'd have a better way to cope with it,
Right.
knowing what I know now, right? But talking 40 years later, so it's like,
Yeah. As a child, it's how do you cope with that? How do you process that? For as I told you, I have a lot of experiences myself, but most of my experiences came on. It was late. Well, mid teenage years was my first encounter with something unexplained, and certainly this isn't about me, but all of my ghostly stuff happened as an adult, and that's where that came on for me. So I was already at a point of, not really, I was always interested in it. I just never saw anything, never experienced anything. But then as I lived in a haunted house, several actually, but I've come to realize maybe it wasn't the house that was haunted. Maybe I was haunted or just, being visited by things that I didn't know how to process or whatever. But it was never fearful, but I can't imagine the burden that would be for a young child to try to just come to terms with it. And then to not be able to have a support system for that. I mean, because when you did reach out about it, it was, oh, it's your imagination. It's a nightmare. It's something like that. So you're really left to your own devices to try to sort through that. Yeah.
right, yeah, yeah, and that's where it's like we just stopped talking about it.
Yeah.
But things. I never stopped seeing shadows and stuff. Even at the house when we lived in up the northern part there of New York, I would see shadows outside my window that would walk by and stop, almost as if they were looking in and then continue to go on. And we had a little bit of property out there. I'd say about an acre or so from what I could remember,
Hmm.
and I could swear I would hear whispers in the trees and stuff like that. So,
Oh,
but never really saw anything other than just maybe a shadow here or there, just like I do now.
yeah.
But that's pretty much through growing up that I had these different feelings about things, like never feeling like I was alone.
Right.
Um, you know, then as once we moved, like there was things that happened, like after my grandfather passed and we came back to Florida, I was just thinking about him, just different things, just recalling different memories of him. And the TV volume went really loud, and then the channel started flipping on its own, and I ran outside. And at this time, I mean, I was probably 11 years old, somewhere around there,
Sure.
12 years old or so. And I sat outside on the back patio. Wouldn't want to go back in the house till somebody came home, because it was like, great, like it's happening again, right?
Yeah.
Now it's here at a different home.
Yeah.
And then somebody, when I did talk to someone about it, I don't remember who it was, but they said, if it's if it's a spirit that or they're trying to contact you, and they know that they're scaring you, they're gonna leave you alone.
Right.
They're not going to continue to try to contact you. And then after that, like it's stopped. So after that, everything was quiet. But again, it's always had that feeling I was never alone or anything. So kind of growing up, I kind of just put a lot of stuff to the back of my mind, didn't really, pay much attention to it. But always had different instincts and feelings about things. Could always feel like something would be off or I wasn't alone. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, it was the middle of the night, and I woke up and I was cold, like very, very cold. And my body was like shaking, and it happened for probably a good 40, 45 minutes. Don't really know like what was going on. I wasn't sick. I didn't get sick. It was just a really weird feeling. Like my body felt like it was kind of like doing one of like these like pulsating in and out.
Yeah.
And like I said, so 3, 4 years ago, I was about 46 years old, 47 years old. And it was after that like a lot of stuff started to just flood at me, like a lot of different, real extremely vivid dreams, which I hadn't had for a very long time. Different types of things I would dream about would happen. So I noticed that after that point, that night, that everything started to become more aware to me, more apparent. I was more conscious about everything. And then all of these things that happened as a child all started coming back. And I started like reliving them in my mind again, and seeing those, that spirit sitting there, and experiencing with my grandfather, and the footsteps, and hearing the noises and the whispers and all this stuff. It all just started like coming back. Like it was just flooding and rushing back at me.
Right.
So I was like, okay, here we go. So started doing some reading, some research, trying to understand a lot more about it. And this probably won't set right with a lot of people, but I had to put my religious beliefs aside in order to be able to understand and accept like what was happening.
Right.
So I had to kind of look past that, because always every time as a child, I would be in church sitting there thinking to myself, this is as a child, there's so much more that I don't know about that's going on here right now. There's so much more behind this. Like what brought all of this here, right? Like why is all this here?
Right.
And that was always a question like I always had. And I always felt like there's just something I'm missing. There's a piece to this whole thing that I'm missing. And I always felt that way. Like every time I would sit in church, I would rarely pay attention, but try to figure out like, why is all of this the way it is? Like, where is all this coming from? So there's always that thirst for that knowledge, that understanding.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got older that I was able to start doing it on my own, and doing that own research, and kind of figuring out, okay, I think, there's the spiritual aspect of it that's missing that we don't know about. Right. So that's when I started just kind of looking into all the different, reading the different books and all these different experiences, and listening to podcasts and watching TV shows, and trying to get as much of an understanding as I could, while trying to find someone that I could talk to that could kind of help like decode some of this stuff. So that was a journey I've been on, for the last, 3 or 4 years or so. Wow. And then during that time, I learned a lot about like divination techniques and using pendulums, which I do for myself. I put a lot of trust in that, and it's helped me out quite a bit.
Oh, good. Okay.
Took me a while to get comfortable with using it. I bought it, probably stared at it for about a month, like before I did anything with it.
Sure.
Um, but there's been a couple other things that have happened here also, here at the shop, because, I've got a couple of employees here,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them will come up and say, "Hey, did you call me?" I was like, "No, I didn't call you."
Oh.
And they're like, "You sure?" Because like it sounded like you came from back there, and I was like, "No, I didn't call you." In the back of my mind, I'm like, "Okay, so this is something a little different."
Mm-hmm.
And that happened. I let it go the first time. I told the guys, I said, "Look, if you hear anything, don't go investigate. Don't come to me. Like if I need you, I'll come walk over here to you,
Yeah.
or I'll call you if you're not close by."
Mm.
And then one day I was gone, and I got a phone call. My employee's like, "Hey, like he was here by himself, and he said, 'Hey, something just said, hey, can you come to the back room?' And it was your voice." I said, "Please tell me you didn't go back there." um, so I think there was a mimic kind of running around here, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And so out came the sage and the cleanses, and I top to bottom with this place. And then at that point, it kind of stopped. So
Oh, cool. Okay.
things like that still kind of happen here and there.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
still hear like little whispers now and again if I'm by myself. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the hard part, and I understand exactly what you're talking about when you made the reference to having to put my religious beliefs aside, because I think religion is a pathway to connecting us with the divine, and there's lots of different paths, and hopefully they all lead us to that higher truth, or the divine love that we're looking for to connect with. But there's a lot of things that religions don't answer. And we're kind of led to believe that, well, if it's not here, then don't worry about it. You need to just get that out of your mind and focus on what is here. And maybe there's merit to that, but that doesn't remove everything that is out there. And I have a good friend, Father Mike Driscoll, who's a Catholic priest and exorcist who I talk to pretty regularly. Well, not for a while now, but anyway, he said in our belief there isn't ghosts. There's either the divine or this dark stuff, and I guess I wasn't familiar with that. I was raised Episcopalian, which is kind of like Catholic light, but I guess our focus was never given, or, well, at least I never paid attention to that part of it. But it doesn't. This stuff goes on, and it still happens, and it's kind of like the parent thing with a child going, "Hey, I saw this man in my closet." No, you didn't go back to your room. Well, it's kind of the parental equivalent like that in some of our church communities. It's like, well, I'm having these experiences in my house. No, you're not. Go back to your house. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't think it's a dismissal, and maybe it's a shortcoming of the churches that they don't address this stuff really, robustly. They just kind of discard it. No, don't worry about that. Get that out of your mind. And maybe they're right in some cases. I don't know, but I can't for the life of me believe that all of this stuff is dark and horrible. In fact, I don't think a lot of it is, but I do believe there's dark and horrible things out there. I want to go back, if you don't mind, kind of to where you said that your rekindling of this kind of started with an illness, and then it all just kind of came back. And it makes me wonder if that wasn't the repression of, because as you and I discussed before the show, that you are a sensitive, and you realize that, you have a pretty strong spiritual connection to things, and you're aware of things. And I think that that's probably consistent with most regular experiencers. These are people that are naturally tuned into this other part of our reality that's around us. But for you, it seemed to have, if I'm understanding your narrative right, that it just kind of manifested in this illness, and then it just all kind of came back. And is that right? Am I interpreting that right?
Yeah, no, that's pretty much, at the time I didn't realize that's what was happening. I mean, I went to bed perfectly fine, wasn't
Right.
thinking anything of it. Middle of the night, I don't even know what time it was. I just remember waking up, and like I said, I was freezing.
Yeah.
And it was the middle of the summer. So, it was happened, I believe it was in June,
Sure.
and middle of summertime, I woke up, I was freezing. and I had like these cold sweats. Like I said, I felt like my body was just kind of like, it was just like pulsing, like my whole body felt like that. And it to me, it seemed like it lasted forever. I think it was probably around 40 minutes, 45 minutes.
Sure.
And then after that, it was just like I said, all of these different thoughts, everything started coming rushing back. And it was specifically those things that I started to, but then everything else kind of opened up to me where you kind of start seeing through things a little bit differently. You start analyzing things a little different. Like, politics wasn't a big deal anymore because I thought it's all just smoke and mirrors, right? It's like, so a lot of things were things that I used to follow that I thought were important just became not essential anymore. And they weren't important to me, and I lost interest in them. And I got a really big, kind of thirst for knowledge when it came to understanding the spiritual aspect and connecting with spirit guides and understanding who mine were and how they were helping me, and then what my purpose was here in this lifetime. So it was after that point that happened that a switch was flipped. Now, I was talking to someone who, and I don't know, like I said, I don't get that much, I don't like to label a lot of things or get that much into it. But when I was talking to someone about it that I met at a metaphysical shop, actually, he said, what was the date roughly around the time this happened? And I told him, and he's like, do you realize that was like one of the biggest spikes in the Schumann resonance at that time?
Interesting.
And I was like, yeah. And like, I didn't know what that was really. I didn't follow any of this stuff. So I'm like, okay, so what's that? And he's like, you don't realize like that's a big spike in like the Earth's magnetic field. And he's kind of like explaining all this stuff to me. And I'm like, okay, but so how does that affect me? And he's trying to like explain, and I'm like, okay, but why it happened, how it happened. It's like at that point I was like, okay, it's history at this point. Like I need to kind of understand, like, what is it telling me? There's a message here, right? So there's a message here that I need to figure out here pretty quick. And I need to understand like what it means. So it's kind of just like what it's been, that's how I got into discovering like pendulums and using the different types of divination devices. One thing I noticed too, ever since I was a child, I'd always see stuff moving around in the night sky. So that was something always very apparent. And even to this day, it's still, I'll sit outside, I'll look up on a clear night, and I'll just see something that's sitting still just kind of start moving and dancing around the sky, and then it just disappears.
Are you talking a light, or what might be an apparition or an energy, or could you describe what you're seeing move?
Yeah, sometimes it's a flash of light that'll just like shoot across really quickly. Other times they look like it's a star that just decides it's going to start moving and going around, and I'll look and see, was there a space station passing by at the time, or is there a satellite or something like that? But sometimes I'll just see them crisscross each other. They'll do different patterns, and then they just kind of fade away into the sky. So that's happened to me ever since I was a child, and that's always continued even to this day. So that's been probably the most consistent thing, I would think, aside from the shadows and the different dark spots and stuff in corners.
Yeah. But it almost seems as if that, over those years of just kind of pushing it out of your mind, turning it off, if you will, that it was just this slow build over time. And then that night you were struck, feeling ill and chilled, and that whatever was going on then. And like you said, the Schumann resonance was off the charts, or really high. Maybe that was the straw that broke the camel's back, proverbially, and the floodgates reopened because anytime you impede energy flow, is it just locked, or does it just build? And it sounds like whatever happened, there was some kind of synchronicity in that event for you, for sure. But it's just like, boom, it all came back, and it was like, you're going to do this journey whether you want to or not, and
Right.
it's time to get engaged. So it is fascinating, but like you said, it's looking at it through the eyes of an adult. You're able to at least process this stuff in a much more robust way than a kid who's full of all kinds of uncertainties with the world around them, and then to be faced with that stuff. So fair enough, you had to turn it off, and that was a pretty strong survival instinct probably that kicked in there, and it got you through. But it's neat that you're re-engaging in it and re-exploring this stuff and furthering it in your mind and in your self-awareness. It sounds like throughout the course of this, it's not only taught you about the reality around us, but it's taught you about the reality of you and who you are. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. Because it forced me to have to do that shadow work and go back in there and really kind of examine things. And it's weird because you kind of relive different decisions that you made and all these different things and how it affected certain timelines, I guess, right? Timing.
Yep.
Another thing that I thought was really strange that had never happened to me up until it was last year. I was just sitting in bed. My wife was on a business trip and I was there by myself, and this loud screech, like a screeching noise, like a woman screeching noise was really prominent. And I go out, look out the window, and I don't see anything, and I hear it again. And it sounds like it's coming from the closet area. It was on that side. And I was like, oh man, like what is that now?
Right.
And it went away. And then the next night, at roughly about the same time of night, it happened again.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, I need to do some protections on this house because I have like no idea what that was. I mean, it could have been anything. I could have been hearing a banshee. I mean, who knows what it was that I heard, because they do make screeching noises from what I've heard and stuff. So could have been something like that. Don't know. But that did kind of rattle my bones a little bit there. So that was another thing that happened in this house here that we're currently in. Don't know that had anything to do with the house, though.
Sure.
But who knows?
Right. Well, I'm a firm believer in the fact that, a lot of times we become focused on locations, and certainly there's correlations between locations and activity. I mean, there's some places where there's still it seems to be more than average, but I really think, and I've said this before, so I'm sorry if this is redundant to any of the listeners, but I really think that if we suddenly received perfect full vision, that we could see everything around us, we would probably all be collectively pooping our pants, because I think we are surrounded and are swimming in a world of spirit. I think that things exist all around us, and perhaps they're just as unaware of us as we are of them. But if we were given the ability to see in the full color spectrum and to hear the full sound spectrum that exists outside of our human capabilities, or at least our physical capabilities, then I think we would be collectively in a real huge state of shock, because we would realize all that's going on around us. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that these things bubble up anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah, there's like, I think for sure, like, I think if we did understand everything that was around us all the time, I think none of us would probably want to go outside. Yeah, I mean, depending how you handle that sort of stuff,
Right.
Because things do happen. I mean, and every now and again, I don't know, you hear this different talk about timelines kind of overlapping with each other and different things happening. And maybe that was that screech that I heard. Don't know. But I know that it caused me to put some spiritual protections up after that, because I didn't know if it was going to come back or try to get in. I do know that I don't have welcome mats outside of my home. Nothing that says, hi, come on in, howdy, nothing.
Make yourself at home. No, yeah. Yeah.
No, it's a brown mat. You can wipe your feet on. That's all that's there.
Well played, sir. Well played. Yeah. I think that's funny, and it is kind of implied consent, right? If you get a welcome mat out there, it's like, well, don't mind if I do, and
Right.
then you got to be ready to deal with whatever that means. So,
Right. Right. And I don't think a lot a lot are ready for it.
no,
So,
no. I do think that, some of these things are transitory. I think that, some of these energies or intelligences can just go in wherever they are. Some of them seem to be anchored to a point or a place, like there's some significance to that. And I don't know why, but others seem to just wander. And because, I hear stories about a lot of hauntings. That's, well, I never really had anything happen until this one day, and then for like a week, and then nothing. And then it was like something just came through and did oh, hey, hold my beer, watch this. And,
right.
So it is very interesting. But in all of this journeying, do you still have terrifying experiences? Are you experiencing dark things, or does it just seem to be more of just that open awareness that there's a lot going on around you?
No, I mean, luckily, no, nothing's, I don't feel like I'm ever threatened or there's anything threatening around or malevolent or anything like that. It's just, I just know that there's something there. I would say that the screeching, whatever that was, that woman's voice, whatever that was, I would definitely say that was probably the most, if I had to put something to it, I'd say that was probably the darkest thing I probably had experienced. And I hope that's the last. So, because some of the stuff, once it's there, and it's not that easy to get rid of. So I don't mess with Ouija boards or anything like that. As a child, for whatever reason, I had always just been terrified of them and never wanted to be around them.
Yeah.
And never understood why. Something in my gut just said, you don't want to be there. So, while that's going on. So I would always just avoid anything and everything like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I would say for the most part, it's probably quiet most of the time.
Good.
I wouldn't say that every day, all day, or even multiple times a week, but the feeling stuff, I feel stuff quite a bit. Like I know there's always something there, but I think, like you said, there's stuff all around us all the time. It's when it starts to materialize, I think, that it really gets our attention.
Yeah.
Every now and again, I'll just be sitting quietly and I'll hear just these really loud explosions.
Really?
And yeah, it's happened to me twice, I'd say, in the last probably 6 months or so, where I'll just be sitting there and I just hear this really loud explosion in my head. And at first I didn't realize what it was. I went outside again. I looked out there. I thought it was a car accident or something in front of the house. It's nothing.
Right.
Asked my wife, did you hear that? She's like, no. And then, about a month or two later, it happened again. This time it was at night when I was just about ready to fall asleep. So odd things like that will happen, and I just don't know where they're coming from, or there's no explanation for it.
Right.
So that was odd. I did talk to, like I said, there's other people I come across. I'm like, have you ever heard something like that? And the response was, yeah, I hate when they do that. So okay.
Fair enough. Now, do you have siblings, or are you an only child, or?
No, I have a sister. Yeah.
Okay. Now, and I don't ask, for you to speak for her, but is this something unique to you, or is this, have you ever had a discussion with her about some of the weirdness you experienced when you were young?
No, they don't. I know. I don't. She's younger than I am. Okay. So when this was happening to me, she was barely walking, at the time when I saw things at my grandparents' house. But even growing up, like my dad, my mom, they don't believe in any of that stuff. And I know as far as my sister, I think she dismisses a lot of that too. Like, yeah, like there's nothing there. Like she's the kind of person that could watch a horror movie at 12 o'clock at night and go to sleep with no problem. So I don't think any of that stuff bothers her.
Sure. Yeah. No, fair enough. I was just curious if this seems to be potentially a family trait, that there's more sensitivity in the family, but it sounds like if it is, you're not hearing about it or haven't.
No, but my younger son is starting to develop that. So he's got a really good sense for things, especially when it comes to reading people. So I'm starting to notice that with him too, and he'll ask me questions now and again, like, what does this mean? Or I had this kind of dream or something. So I think he's starting to probably develop something. I'm not really sure what exactly he's experiencing right now, but I know he's definitely picking up on things. So,
Sure.
and
Wow.
he'll see shadows dance across the backyard sometimes.
Wow.
Because he'll tell me about it. So yeah, I mean, he's definitely picking up on it.
I've got to admit, I'm actually envious of that because I would love to see what's really around, and maybe that's a double edged sword. You know, from an academic and curious place, I would like to see when something is around. You know, it feels like, you know, we should have the ability to know if they're going to be in our space and possibly interacting with us. We should be able to see them, but on the same side of it, you know, maybe ignorance is also bliss. You know, not being distracted or disturbed or even you know, concerned about having to deal with those things directly. Maybe it's nice not to be able to see. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, what I've seen as a child versus what I see now are two completely different experiences.
Mm,
There is that part of me that's like, I kind of think maybe I would like to see more of what's around. And
yeah.
then when I talk to different mediums, they're like, you really don't want to see what's around. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, but I would like the option to experience it. But I don't think you can turn it off. It's like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
So um, sometimes I think maybe, you know, if there is something controlling what comes to us and what we can see, you know, if it's a spirit guide, if it's God, if it's whatever it is, maybe they just know you're not ready for it. So
Right.
we're just going to give you a little taste of it, and maybe that's all you're going to get.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't think there's a switch. I don't know if we control it or something else is controlling it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've heard that if yeah, and this is something I've heard from several different psychic friends of mine, is that, you know, certainly meditation can help to strengthen or you know, empower your ability to perceive things as a sensitive person, and probably as a non-sensitive person too, because I think all of these things are intrinsically a part of us, because even though we live in these meat suits, we are a soul, we are an energetic being. And I was going to talk about this too, that your TV going up as you were pondering, you know, your grandfather and stuff. I think that that's such a common experience for, you know, ghostly presences, because at the end of the day, we're not this. We are energetic. We are energy, conscious energy, but, you know, very real energy. So maybe it's almost second nature to, you know, the electronics that are around us, since they are energetic things themselves. Maybe the influencing that energy flow or changing it isn't a big thing. You know, that it maybe is quite easy for them, because that's such a common thread in a lot of you know, paranormal experiences. Is, well, the lights started flickering, and then you know, it's the TV. I've had that experience many times, where the TV can turn on and start rifling through menus even.
Mhm.
And that to me is really profound, because it's not just your standard, oh, remote glitch, maybe your neighbor's giving aberrant signals and to your TV, but when it's like intelligently going through menus and picking things, it's like, oh wow, you know, what are the odds of that happening? So but electronic disturbances seem to be one of the first things that people experience. You know, I don't know how you feel about that, but that's my take on it. What do you think?
No, I actually, no, I agree. I think synchronicities are a big part of your awareness and your consciousness, right? So, you know, and I think that they spirit communicates with us with how we're most likely going to understand what they're trying to say. So with some people, it
Yes.
might be numbers. With you, it could be music or certain. So you might be thinking about something, then you hear a song, and if you're really paying attention, if you're in the moment and you're not wandering about the future or worrying about the past,
Uh-huh.
but you're in the moment and you catch that, I think those synchronicities are there all the time. I think we miss them because we're so distracted.
Right.
So I do think the TV, the going through the menus, I think it's trying to get our attention. There's a message behind. I don't think they're trying to scare us,
Yeah.
depending on the energy itself. But
Yep.
I think for the most part, you know, I think we're all being led down our path for our life's purpose. And I think if we stray too much, they do things to pull us back and say, okay, we gave you enough rope. Now we're going to tighten it a little bit,
Yep.
because it's our job to make sure you like complete this contract.
Yes.
So no, I absolutely think so. I think they do that to get our attention, or maybe it might happen if you're second guessing, am I really clairaudient? And then you hear a big explosion in your head. It's like, yeah, you are. So stop asking yourself that. Stop trying to tell yourself you're not, right?
Next question. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We're tired of telling you this. And, so maybe that's just how they choose. And with everyone, it is different. If somebody likes to rifle through social media, maybe they're going to see a video that pops up and says, "Hey, if you're watching this right now," and it might have something to do with what you were thinking.
Yeah.
I do believe that, and I do believe that, yeah, stuff like that happening with TV rifling through menus or picking a show, and it happens to come on right as it's speaking something that you might have been thinking a question to, right?
Yeah. Like
there's way more intelligent stuff out there than us. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Tom, I got to share you one experience, because you talked about we're tired of showing you again, and I think there is that. I had an experience myself, and I don't think I've ever talked about this on my shows, but I was going through a really tough period in my life at this time. Just everything was just falling down, and it felt like I was just, crawling on glass. Just everything just seemed to be sideways, and I was like, God. What's good? I was driving down this back. It was in a rural country road around a bunch of cornfields and stuff. And I was on this 45-minute drive home, and I'm looking out the car window it was a summer day. I had the window down and my arms out, and I'm just like, man, I don't even think, I don't know how this is all going to get sorted out. I'm just so lost. And then in the cloud, like in the sky, suddenly this beautiful array of northern lights appeared. And to me, northern lights have always been a mystical symbol. It's like one of my own personal symbols. Like, yeah, we're listening. And I was like, wow. And then they went away. And almost as quickly, they stopped. And I'm still driving. I'm like, was that just circumstance? I said, if that was really you giving me a sign, make it happen again. And boom, the sky lit up again with these northern lights. And then it stopped again. I'm like, wait a minute. Can you do it again? And boom, again. It was just like 3 times in a row, these northern lights just appeared, and they were very brief. They weren't just, consistent, but it was just so, it was like my divine reassurance or whatever. Like, you know what? We got you. You're going to be okay. And it meant the world to me. But I imagine thinking from the other side, it's like, come on, dude, twice. Come on, again. What do these intelligences think? Like, oh man, just get it, will you?
Yeah, so third time's a charm thing. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do that.
I didn't ask again after that. I'm like, okay, I got it. What are the odds, Every time, well, first it was the statement, then I was given the display, and then to ask and show it again. And then one more time I was like, okay, I'm not gonna, continue to drive this into the dirt.
Yeah.
But it is interesting how these things, like I think a lot of these experiences with ghosts and stuff may be just that. And we often think, well, it's just this aberrant, weird haunting or whatever, but it might not be. It might be some lesson trying to come through to us. And you're right. They only have certain ways to, they might have a million ways to manifest things, but in ways to get our attention. And certainly, it might just be like, oh, well, there's this, which could be symbolic. But when your TV does something and it seems relevant, or a song like you're saying, or these other things, they just seem so intelligent and so directed that I think that oftentimes they're misinterpreted as these, oh, it's a horrible ghost trying to haunt me. And maybe it's, no, pay attention. You're being told something. You're being taught something. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think a lot of that gets kind of muddied up with the sensationalism of the movies. Because I think,
yes.
In the movies, they like for instance, if people think, that as a clairvoyant or as a clairaudient, you're going to have this full-on conversation, and something's going to be in your ear saying, and it's going to tell you, read an entire chapter to you, exactly what you have to do. Because that's the way they make it appear in the movies.
Yeah.
And that's not how that works. That's not how that at all is even remotely close. So Hollywood sensationalizes everything. And I think we expect to see so much more of a response. And the divine is like, no, like, we're not that loud. We're not that obnoxious. Okay. We're that little whisper you're going to hear among all the noise. You have to choose to listen to that. And I think that's why they do things like that. And I think that, like you were saying, you always had this fascination with, the Northern Lights, and they knew that they're like, hey, this is how we're going to answer, because we know that this means something to you.
Yes.
It's not always going to be this loud, door banging thing. I think like it's portrayed, or TV screens flipping around and doing cartwheels or whatever, you know. Right. I mean, it's like, it's going to be subtle. It's going to be something that means something to us, that's sentimental to us. And I think that's why so many people maybe miss, or they say, well, I don't experience anything. Well, maybe you're just looking for something different. So I've learned to pay attention to the small things more so than the large, loud, obnoxious things. So
right. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And I think there's beauty in all of it. And not to say that there aren't just, random hauntings or irritated spirits and things like that. Those things certainly happen as well. I mean, but I think, again, oftentimes I don't even think these presences mean to scare us, but sometimes they just may want to be noticed, like to be acknowledged, like, hey, I'm here. Because, imagine being in a space where people walk by you all day long and they don't even look at you. They don't see you. They don't interact with you. And you're just feeling alone. So maybe you just need that reassurance, that contact, because I think a lot of times, if they are indeed formerly human spirits and perhaps even non-human spirits, but that we have a need for connection. And I'm sure that doesn't change whether or not you have a meat suit on, that you still need that connection. So, acknowledgement sometimes can go a long way, or just saying, hey, I realize you're here, and, having a discussion like, don't call my name and don't call my employees, that kind of thing. Like statements of, okay, I know you're here, but don't do that. That's not okay. You got to quit that. Cause I don't think they always, and in most cases, try to go out of their way to horrify people and to terrify people, but maybe they just want to be noticed. And
maybe they need help.
Yeah. And maybe they need help.
Right.
Exactly. Like, can you help me get home? I'm not where I need to be. Yeah.
Well, and they don't know how.
Well said.
Yeah. And that's one thing I do firmly believe, I think, probably need to try to understand the root of it. Now, not everything is going to come up. Not everything is going to need help, right? There are stuff out there that's there. Yeah. But yeah, I think a lot of times, that soul could be wandering or could be looking for something. And if it knows that you're in tune,
yes,
and you're paying attention, it might use more extreme ways of getting your attention. There's so many different, I think, thought processes on that and experiences. But there's a lot more out there than we can see, for sure. Yeah. And I don't believe in coincidences anymore.
Yes.
So
very true. Very true. It's been an incredible discussion, brother. And I really, really thoroughly appreciated getting the chance to talk to you and to bounce ideas back and forth. And thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been wonderful.
I do appreciate you having me. I don't typically do stuff like this, so it was fun for me.
Oh, good. Good. Well, you're always welcome to come back. As I told you before we started recording, it's like, this doesn't have to be a one-stop shop. If you got more to share or more things you want to put out there, I'm happy to hear from you, and I know our listeners will be as well. So you're always welcome, brother.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll be in touch if anything else unusual happens, right?
All right. Sounds great. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for us today. So hope you guys enjoyed the show, and thank you again so much for all your love and support. And remember, if you want to follow the Paranormal Portal, probably the easiest way is to head over to paranormalportal.net. And that's the homepage for the Paranormal Portal. And you'll find links to all of our different social media and sites and information about the shows, including our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/paranormalportal. Or just look for Paranormal Portal on Google or whatever search engine, and you'll find links to our social media, such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So we're kind of all over the place, and we're spreading as well as we can. But anyway, thank you so much for the love and support. Y'all take care, and remember, we love y'all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. Until next time.